My own building wouldn't let me in. The turnstiles in the lobby flashed red, like a predator's eyes in daylight, and a cold female voice from the security system repeated evenly, "Access denied." I still managed to cover my watch under my cuff with a wave of habit, as if that would make a difference, and then I saw the guards, my guards, walking toward me with a quick, service-like stride, their hands on their radios like pistols, and I realized that this wasn't a glitch. This was a sentence. For a moment I saw myself on the polished black stone of the floor, an expensive suit, a tired face, a faint shadow of a smile for the staff, and zero. The system didn't recognize me. The city I had fed with contracts and charity evenings swallowed me whole, and didn't choke. "Sir, I'm sorry, but the board of directors," the security chief began, and that board cut through my nerves like a blade through glass. "Since when does the board talk through the turnstile?" I asked, keeping my back straight. "There's an order to temporarily restrict your access to all of the holdings premises. The lawyers are on their way." "Whose lawyers?" "Mine or theirs?" "All of them," he said, lowering his eyes. The phones went up like a living fence. Young faces, ironic eyebrows, quick fingers gliding across the screens. I, who taught this city to love a picture, became one. A message appeared on my phone screen without warning, from a former partner with whom we had once shared coffee and our first victories. "You were warned. Don't say you didn't see the wave." I knew that language, when the enemy tries on the tone of a mentor. The lawyer came back with a laconic message. "NSSMC and tax raid. Search warrant. Press under the building in 20 minutes. I stared at the air, which had become thicker than bulletproof glass, and tried to figure out who pulled the trigger first. The council doesn't have that reflex without an outside hand. An outside hand doesn't pull without the promise of prey. And the prey is me. "Sir, we have to ask you." Another guard took a step forward. "Ask or take me out." I didn't raise my voice. I simply weighed my words as if I were buying a company with debts. "Show me to the exit. It will be better for everyone." My mother called, and I didn't answer right away. Then again, and I pressed accept. Because as a child, they told me that honesty begins with the phone in my hand. The TV was blaring in the receiver. "Son, why do they say in the news that you—" She didn't finish. I could have said, "Fake politics, we'll figure it out." But my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth, because behind the glass of the lobby on an armored pickup truck, cameras were rolling. "Everything is under control, Mom," I said in a strange voice, and at that moment I felt that this was the first and worst false sentence I had uttered today. The guards opened the door. The city hit me in the face with wind and questions. I took a step into this bad hour-long performance, understanding only one thing. If I was crossed out here, it meant that someone had convincingly proven to the world that I was superfluous. And now I had to find out why he knew my weaknesses so well. I didn't sleep for the first 48 hours. The phone rang non-stop, but not from numbers that could save me. Only journalists, former colleagues, acquaintances who suddenly spoke in the tone of doctors at an autopsy. Everyone wanted a piece of the truth, but no one wanted the whole truth. My accounts were blocked, my bank cards were frozen, and even the watch I bought to celebrate my first million looked strange on my wrist. I, who had once managed dozens of companies, was now looking for passwords from old mail to figure out who had planted documents that I hadn't signed. On the third day, I met him, Mark, my former CFO. He was sitting in a cafe, calm, confident, and looking through me as if I were a reflection in a mirror. "You know what you did," he said quietly when I sat down opposite him. "Explain," I replied. "Because I only have guesses. You played with people who couldn't be trusted. And they decided it was more convenient to get rid of you than to explain their schemes to you. Are you with them?" He smiled. I'm just not with you. I saw my naivety in that smile. I had once believed that in business, betrayal was the exception. Now I understood. The exception was my ability to forgive. Mark leaned closer, the smell of coffee mixed with the smell of cold metal. The gun was nearby, somewhere under his jacket. You've been made a suspect in the case, he whispered. But don't worry, there's not much evidence. Just enough to ruin your name. Chaos awaited me at home. A lawyer's letter, a search warrant, a camera outside the door. Reputation is currency, and mine was being exchanged for small coins. Those I had once saved from bankruptcy were speaking out against me on television. The woman I had lived with for 10 years had disappeared abroad, withdrawing the money I had once called her safety net. That night, for the first time, I realized how quickly the system eats up its creators. Every call I made was a void, every name a shadow. I tried to find meaning, but even in my own actions I saw only haste and panic. I met with my lawyer, an old family friend who had always believed in numbers, not humanity. They need to make someone guilty, he said. You're convenient. And what should I do? You have to disappear. I stared at him for a long time, like a doctor offering amputation instead of treatment. But inside, something had already been cut off. Trust, pride, meaning. If I disappear, they win. They've already won, he answered calmly. The only question is whether you'll have a chance to come back when the dust settles. I didn't know then that the dust never settles. Because when you're accused of a lie, the truth becomes another accusation. I walked out into the night that smelled of rain and defeat, and for the first time in years, I wanted not to control, but to understand. To understand who had so skillfully counted my sins and billed me for them. A week passed. I lived in a rented apartment on the outskirts of the city, without security, without assistance, without silence. The TV in the corner spoke of me in strange words. The internet published my dossier like sacred scripture. And in this resounding vacuum, she suddenly appeared, Anna. Once a journalist, then an enemy, now unexpectedly the only person who dared to call. Haven't you run away yet? Her voice sounded ironic, but not hostile. Not yet. I think where. Don't run away. You don't know the main thing yet. We met at night, in the parking lot of an old shopping center. She arrived in a cheaply repainted Golf, in jeans and a dark jacket, without makeup, with the same directness in her eyes that I once hated in journalists. In her hands an envelope, thick yellowed, with a seal that I recognized immediately. It was an internal document of a holding company that shouldn't exist. Where did you get it? From your people. Former ones. Those who now work for your enemies. Why are you helping? She turned away. Because the truth is my disease. And because maybe you're not who you were made out to be. I opened the envelope in the car. Old signatures, falsified agreements, transfers of funds through offshore companies, under which my name was written, but it wasn't my signature. And another sheet, an internal memorandum of the board, dated 3 weeks before the scandal, on the temporary transfer of control to a new shareholder. The shareholder was Mark, the same one who had been sitting in the coffee shop, calm and content. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a plan, long and precise, written in the offices where I had once decided the fate of others. And in that moment, I realized my downfall didn't begin the day the system didn't recognize me. It began when I stopped looking people in the eye. You can't just sue, Anna said. They control everything. The banks, the lawyers, even your friends. So what do I do? There's only one way. She looked at me for a long time, and I felt that the next words would change everything. I have access to their servers. If you can prove that the documents are forged, you can destroy their game. But this data is not for everyone. What's in there? something that even the government shouldn't see. If you make it public, you'll save yourself, but you'll sink half the city. I sat in silence. All my life, I've been learning to choose between profit and risk, between truth and benefit. But now the stakes were different. Either I would prove my innocence, or I would create chaos in which everyone would burn out, even those who had once simply signed papers without realizing that they were destroying someone else's fate. I don't want revenge, I said finally. I want the truth. Then be prepared that it won't save you, she replied. We agreed to meet in 2 days. And that night, when I left her car, for the first time, it seemed to me that I saw not the light of city lights, but the glints of a new path. But that path was dark, slippery, and I didn't know whether it led uphill, or just deeper down. I spent 2 days in silence, as if facing a verdict. The apartment was bare, like an empty safe that had once held my victories. I didn't even go out for coffee. I was afraid of faces staring back at me with recognition and cameras searching for a new sensation. Anna called at exactly midnight. "Ready?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, because the word, ready, suddenly seemed absurd. How could you be ready to destroy the world you were building? "Yes," I said, and I was lying to myself. We met in an old technology park, the former data center of my corporation. The irony was that I had once financed its security system. Now I was walking through the same door, only now without ownership rights. Inside, everything breathed of cold and dust. Servers, like metal tombstones, stood in rows, and in their hum I heard the echoes of my past decisions. Anna plugged in her laptop, entered the key, and the screen came to life. We had access to the board archives, internal chats, financial records, even recordings of closed meetings. "If you click here," she said, "the system will send everything into the public domain. The data will end up in the media, on forums, in shadowy services. There's no stopping them. And if they don't, they'll sell your name again. This time for good." I stared at the cursor blinking over the send button. 2 truths were fighting inside me. One was mine, simple, pure, I'm not a criminal. The other was cold, ruthless. I'm part of a system that had created its own mechanism of destruction. And now that mechanism was looking at me with its soulless cursor. Anna stood nearby, looking not at the screen, but at me. "If you do this," she said, "you'll either be imprisoned or made a hero. But heroes don't live here for long." I haven't lived for a long time. I whispered. I pressed. The screen froze for a second, then filled with lines of code flying like a stream of fire. The servers hummed, the system struggled, but data was already pouring out into the world. And at that moment, when I felt a brief satisfaction, like after a successful deal, the light suddenly went out. A dull thud. Silence. Anna raised her head first. "They knew you were coming," she whispered. In the darkness, I heard footsteps. 2 men in black appeared from a side corridor, cold as shadows. One of them held a gun, the other a phone. The familiar logo of my former company glowed on the screen. "Mr. Orloff," one said, "you have just destroyed the trust that took years to build." "No," I answered. "I just got mine back." The shot wasn't loud. The silencer did its job. The bullet hit a metal rack nearby, scattering sparks. I grabbed Anna by the hand, and we rushed to the exit. The servers crackled as if they were breathing fire. On the monitor that flashed in the darkness, I saw the transfer was complete. The files went out into the world. The game is over. We ran outside. The air smelled of smoke and freedom. Somewhere in the city, the first waves of scandal were already beginning. Reporters were waking up. Stocks were falling. Anna stood nearby, breathing heavily. "You did it," she said. I looked at my hands, which were shaking. "Yes," But whether it was right, I don't know yet. Because when you destroy the system that betrayed you, you never know if you haven't awakened an even more terrible one. The news broke at dawn. My name was everywhere again, but this time not as a symbol of greed, but as the face of exposure. Insider leaked corporate mafia archives, the most high-profile investigation of the decade. The silence of gold cost them billions. The city had lived on my downfall, and now on my voice. And yet, I didn't feel victorious. Only tired. Because the truth, even when it sets free, burns the one who lets it go. Anna and I were hiding out in the suburbs, in an old motel where rusty water flowed from the tap and the TV only picked up local channels. She sat on the bed, staring at the screen, and I stood silently by the window. "Did you understand that when you pressed the button?" she asked. "What exactly?" "That there would be no going back after this." I didn't press it for the sake of going back, but so that the end would finally make sense. There was a knock on the door. Not the police, not the press, a gray-haired man in a simple raincoat. I recognized him from the past. He had once been an advisor to the ministry, then disappeared without a trace. Now he stood before me, calm, almost resigned. "You did what no one dared to do," he said. "But you have no idea what you have discovered." I did not want to reveal the secrets of the world, only the truth about myself. There are no boundaries in such cases. You have not only published forgeries. In those files, deals with the government, connections with foundations, data about people who do not yet know that they have become part of the game. So you have come to intimidate me? No. To warn me. There are forces that do not forgive the truth, even when it is fair. He left, leaving a chill in me that did not let go for a long time. Anna silently flipped through the news. The board of directors had been dissolved. Several high-ranking officials had been detained. Some of the data had been handed over to international investigators. And among all these headlines, one sentence: ex-businessman Alexander Orlov has disappeared. His whereabouts are unknown. I looked at the screen and suddenly realized that this was not a lie. I had really disappeared. The man who once measured success in numbers had long since died in that server bunker. Only a shadow remained, which had finally stopped running. That evening I went outside. The neon of the city was flashing, but somewhere between these lights a silence was being born, honest, calm, real. Anna stood next to me, and we were silent. Because what can you say when everything has already been said in the headlines? "Do you regret it?" she asked. I thought about it. I used to think that the greatest sin was to betray others. Now I know. The greatest sin is to betray myself. And I will never betray again. She smiled. Then the wind lifted the dust from the road, and this world, so noisy and predatory, became for a moment as light as breath. I took a step forward, feeling for the first time in many years no fear, no roles, no sense of success. Only one simple truth: everything I had was an illusion, but everything I lost became the truth. And perhaps that is where true wealth lies.